Hello everyone, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink, catching up on editing all the footage I have. This was for last week's Color Throwdown Challenge. We've already got a new Color Throwdown Challenge going on. I'll have a video coming up for that right away. But life. Anyway, I'm using the Simon Says Stamp Peony Bouquet stencil that I raved about when I did my Hey Bestie release and review. I just loved this stencil. I think it's gorgeous. So I have it on my Wendy Vecchi station here with the magnets and everything holding the stencil in place over some Neenah Desert Storm cardstock. I decided to completely mask off the leaves using just pieces of Post-it tape. You could skip this step. It's not, you don't have to be this particular, but that's the mood I was in when I was doing this. And I'm starting with picked Raspberry Distress Oxide ink. I love how Oxide inks look on Desert Storm cardstock, as well as just any darker cardstock. It's one of the perks of having an ink like this that has like the pigment qualities in it. So I started with the picked Raspberry. And then rather than do everything at once on this background, I also pulled out the envelope I'm going to use, because with the masking and the colors and everything, it was just easier to do one thing at a time. And the envelope is the same cardstock, the Desert Storm cardstock, but I die cut it with the base of the A2 V-flap envelope wafer die. Told you guys I was going to be obsessed with this wafer die. I love it. So I die cut the base, so I just placed the stencil over it with, all the Post-it tape masked off everything, and then doing the same thing, inking it up with the picked Raspberry Distress Oxide ink and just applying it with one of my Simon Says Stamp blender brushes. And then I'm taking another brush and just kind of dabbing like the top portion of the brush into chipped SAPPHIRE Distress Oxide ink and blending that just into the center of these flowers. And then I'll kind of go back with the brush I used for the pink just to blend it a little bit more. And then I'm going to remove the stencil, and then I'm going to go back to my card front so that I can add the purple. I removed the stencil from this first because I didn't want the chipped sapphire over the stencil when I applied the pink to the envelope. Again, I was being a little particular, but this works. So then I applied that chipped sapphire again, blended it in, and then once that's all blended into place, I can remove the Post-it tape from the leaf area. And then some of them, I kind of moved them back over the flowers because I didn't want the green to get onto the flowers, all that stuff. So I just reused all those little pieces that I had of the Post-it tape just to kind of mask off the areas so that I can apply another ink to the leaves. So I'm using Cracked Pistachio Distress Oxide ink. And again, it's funny with this color especially, it almost like glows on the Desert Storm cardstock. I love how it looked. So apply that over the leaves and then kind of move some of my Post-it tape around just to mask off the last little remaining areas so I can get everything on here. And right now this card front is larger than A2 sized. I'm gonna like die cut it in a little bit, but sometimes you just never know. So I had a large scrap of it, so I thought, well, I'll just ink blend on it now and then I'll die cut it to the size I want once I'm done. So applied the green to the bottom portion of those little leaves there. And then again, I'm going to take that stencil and place it back over the envelope and then do the same thing. So get the card front out of the way and then place this over the envelope. And I was a complete, brain stopped working there for a minute. I was barely holding the stencil in place. I have the magnets right there. So I kind of messed up on the one little portion of the leaves. But the bottom portion was fine, and then it was right here where I just kind of stopped really paying attention to what I was doing. So yeah, made a little bit of an oops, but I'm not too concerned about it. I just kind of repositioned everything and then just reapplied the ink. So, and used the magnets to hold my stencil in place this time. So applied the ink, and really you could definitely leave this as is. I think it's gorgeous. I had mentioned though in that release and review video how so many people are using color pencils to really add, detail and definition. So I decided I'd try my hand on it. I kept mine very, very simple. I only used one color pencil per colors. So I'm just using a green on the leaves. I'm going to use one darker pink and then a darker blue pencil. And that's it. If you really wanted to go in and add some detail, you could definitely start with this color and then go into deeper colors of the pencils and add more definition. I didn't do that. Honestly, if I'm being completely brutally honest, this isn't for me. I might change my mind down the road because I do like to color and everything, but I just found myself getting kind of frustrated. So, yeah. I do like how it looks though. Like in the doing it, I was just like, when will this be over? But then when I was done, I was like, oh, I like just that little, even though it's subtle, it's just that little bit of extra definition. So I was using a very, very light touch. I wasn't pressing very hard. It just gives it that something. And yes, if I'd gone in with even just one darker shade of the pencil and added a little bit more, it would have even like popped more. But again, I wasn't feeling it while I was doing it. But then once I was done, I do like how it looked. So I just went along and that's all I did. I just kind of added areas, basically take kind of the base of each leaf. I would, scribble on a little bit of the color pencil, but I'm using the Polychromo, fabulous Faber-Castell Polychromo pencils. Really with this, you could probably use almost any color pencils. These are obviously kind of the top of the line ones that I have saved up for a very long time to get them a few years ago, and then now they just sit in a case and I don't reach for them very often, but they'll last forever, so I'm not too concerned about it. So I added a little bit of definition. Same thing with the petals. I kind of stuck to like the bases of the petals, like the bottom areas of each one, added a little bit of that darker pink, and then added a little bit of the blue. And then once everything was done, the ink is already like obviously dry before I add the color pencil, anything. I'm going to die cut this with one of Simon's basic rectangle wafer dies. And I also die cut some pattern paper, which I'll get to in a minute. But before I get to assembling everything, I want to stamp a sentiment. So I have the CZ Design stamp set that's also from the new release. This is the Miss You MISSY stamp set. And I took a sentiment from the set. And I have the panel in my mini MISTI here. Got the sentiment lined up, and then I'm going to stamp it with VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink. And when I stamp it the first time, it doesn't show up as well. It just kind of seems to, fade in. But I'm going to stamp this multiple times because I'm stamping on top of that Oxide ink, on top of, all those colors and the Desert Storm. So I end up stamping this actually 3 times, and that just really seems to kind of intensify the sentiment. And then that's it. I'm not going to add any other sentiments. I'm not going to die cut anything. So then for the card base, since I have my MISTI out, I'm going to put the card base into the mini MISTI, and I'm using another sentiment from the set. Nice big bold Miss Your Face. I didn't want to use this one on the front because I didn't want this like obscuring a bunch of the flowers. So I decided to use it on the inside. And this one I'm going to ink up with that chipped sapphire Oxide ink. So ink up that stamp really, really well, and then I'm going to stamp that onto the inside of the card. So once I have that stamped, off camera, I die cut some pattern paper from the Tonic Blue Blossom collection. I'm kind of obsessed. That's the only pattern I think I've used from this pack is the navy blue one. I love it. There's something about it. And you get a bunch of sheets of each one. So I die cut that with the largest of the Simon A2 wafer dies, the rectangle dies, because the largest one is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And then I'm going to adhere that to my card base with some craft tacky glue. So this will completely cover the white card base. So once I've got the pattern paper into place, I had added Simon's Big Mama foam tape to the back of the card front because Big Mama foam tape, every time I say it, I always think like, oh, like you almost get the impression like this is going to be really thick foam tape. It's going to be really, really, really dimensional. It's not. If you haven't ever seen it, the roll itself is massive. The roll is huge, but the foam tape is thin. It's thinner than the basic Scotch foam tape we always use. And I like it for just that little extra bit of dimension. So I completely coated the back of the panel with that foam tape and then popped that into place on my card base. Now I need to assemble my envelope. And I'd cut the base, like I said, from the Neenah Desert Storm cardstock. And then the flaps I die cut from that same pattern paper. So everything's all matchy-matchy. So I'm going to fold in the flaps on the base and just use my Teflon bone folder, just kind of reinforce those. And then the flaps have their own little score line. So fold those in, and then I'm just going to add craft tacky glue, a very thin amount. You don't want glue oozing out when you are assembling an envelope, because then you're going to glue your envelope shut. If you're not comfortable with using liquid glue, 1/8 inch score tape works fabulously as well. But I'm just comfortable with this glue and it just works. So I apply a thin little bit to the flaps, get them positioned on each side of this envelope. And then once they are straight in place, adhered, then I'm going to fold up the bottom flap of the envelope and then adhere the pattern paper flaps on top of it. So everything just works. And then when it comes time to actually put the card in the envelope and like send the envelope, I will either use the craft tacky or I will use score tape just to seal it shut and it'll be good to go. So got that assembled. And then shocker, I know people are probably like, their jaws are going to be on the floor if you watch my videos. I'm not going to add bling. But I couldn't leave it completely as is. I couldn't do it. So I pulled out my Nouveau glitter accents in ballroom blue. These just have some dimension and, you know, the glitter and the color was perfect. So I carefully applied these just to the centers of these flowers on the card base itself. I'm not going to touch the envelope. The envelope is fine. But these just give it that little extra something. So there's a little bit of gloss, a little bit of glitter, you know, that really pretty blue color. And that's it. I did not add any crystals or sequins or glitter. You know, this is about the simplest card I've made in a very long time. But it's so pretty in the colors and just love it. I struggled trying to show you guys the glitter accents here. Tried to get as close as I could. You can kind of see it now when I get it like literally an inch away from my camera. Turned on the flashlight on my phone just so you could see, you know, it's subtle, but it's pretty. And with the like matching envelope, it just makes a nice little set. Like this was so fun to make. So as always, I will have links below the video to my blog post. I will have a supply list with links to all the supplies used. And you can check that all out below if you are interested. Thank you all so much for watching and subscribing and thumbs upping and commenting. I really appreciate it. And I try to respond and, you know, heart as many comments as I possibly can to keep up with it all. So thank you guys so much. And I will see you all very soon in the next video. Bye.